Hi, welcome to the Rosewell Amps workshop where we're mid-flow repairing this orange Tiny Terror. You may think I just repair vintage valve amps, but no, I do the modern stuff. This is a 500 watt Class D bass amp, and Class D came about around about 15 years ago. It started being used in guitar amplifiers, but it's not new. I was trained in Class D amplifiers in the 90s. We came across them in television receivers. The first one was a Sharp CRT set, which used Class D audio and Class D frame output circuits, and it got plenty of power out of tiny little transistors. So the way they get 500 watts out of a little amp like this is Class D involves what's called pulse width modulation. The output transistors are switched on and off at high frequency, and they're modulated by the audio signal. And after amplification, there's a simple filter to filter off the high frequency component. There is a bit left which goes to the loudspeaker, but that's just left there and the loudspeaker ignores it. But this is the power supply which is in trouble, and it's a switch mode power supply. Now these run probably around about 30, 40, maybe 50 kilohertz, and you do have to change your servicing approach to them slightly. Whereas a conventional power supply with a transformer, and you've got your secondaries and the rectified and filtered, with these you have a primary section. The mains here is rectified. The output's about 340 volts, and that goes straight to these switching transistors. And the heart of the power supply is this IC, this chip, and that's supplied from the high voltage through a dropper, what's called a startup resistor. Feeds one of the pins, and it's Zened at 15 volts by this Zener. And once the oscillator is running and the power supply is functioning, there's a winding here, and it's rectified and filtered, and that becomes the run supply. So it's self-powering once it's got startup from here. So you've got two transistors which switch on and off rapidly, two MOSFETs at maybe 40, 50 kilohertz, depends on the design. This transformer's a high frequency transformer, not the conventional linear type in the old type power supply, so they're very light and very efficient. And then the secondaries are rectified in the usual way. We've got plus 53, minus 53, a high voltage supply for the tube preamps, and we've got a supply for the preamp tube heaters, and we've got a supply for the fan. Now in this one, these two transistors have gone short circuit. Catastrophic failure, they've smashed out the fuse, because when these two go short circuit, it puts a short straight across the 340 volt line. For a fraction of a millisecond, maybe microseconds before the fuse blows, you've got the full voltage goes to the gates of the transistors, which will go into the IC. So it's recommended that you replace the IC at the same time as the two transistors, because if you just replace these two when the IC is faulty, when you switch on, it'll blow the lot up again. So I'm going to fit two new transistors and an IC. Now the trouble is with these circuits, you cannot put an oscilloscope on this side. This side is common to chassis. You've got ground, chassis earth, but this side it floats above ground potential, so you have a minus 340 volts and a plus 340 volts relative to chassis. So you cannot put an oscilloscope ground lead anywhere on this side, or you blow the thing up. You can if you've got differential probes for an oscilloscope, but they're very expensive. But you can work on these with an oscilloscope by not powering up to the mains. You can tag in a low voltage supply, 15 volts across here, and then you can look out for the pulses on the gates. So I'm going to fit these components. They came today from Mouser, UK. There's the output transistors, the chips in there somewhere. The transistors mount on a heat sink. There, I've already taken them out. The chip, that's where the chip lives. And this is the heat sink, which goes across all these devices. So look out for part 2, where everything will be connected up and will be all the parts will be fitted, and we'll switch on and we'll watch for any magic smoke. See you in part 2.